If you have a new story that you've already written the first draft on, or you're about to, or written the outline for, or jotted down notes about the essence of what that story is about, that's just the very beginning. The real fun is just about to get started. The rewriting of a story is the opposite of tedious and drudgery. After you've written the first draft, that's just the springboard. Now you have a structure that you can use to make it easier and funner to come up with and develop new ideas. So when we are developing stories, there are many different approaches, and using the concept of fate is one of those approaches. Fate is usually described as something that's supernatural. The fates, they're puppeteers of us mortal lives on earth, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about fate as the effect that many different forces have, and we're using fate as a concept to help us work creatively. So an individual's fate has to do with, it's like the cards they're dealt. So it might have to do with how they were born. Were they born missing a limb, or were they born being able to run very fast? These are things that can affect and play out throughout their lives, and fate is usually kind of something that we never conquer throughout our lives. It's the one thing that follows us throughout our lives and has an effect on the kind of life we live. A character, an individual's fate could be the cards they were dealt, sort of the inescapable win and lose factors of their life. It can also be seen as their personal battle. So an individual's personal battle could be a good thing. Like me personally, my personal battle is to finish the mammoth project I'm working on, and it is a very positive thing. Hopefully no lives will be lost in the process. But the fate can be self-determined by the character or individual, and it can also be beyond their control to escape it. They can't. It is part of themselves for life. They're stuck with it, and in many cases they stick themselves to it. They won't let it go. But also, a person's fate is not a one thing. One character's fate could be described as motherhood and local society. So it's sort of these two fates closely interwoven together, and that describes her world, her kind of the game board that she plays on. So when you're developing a new character, use this concept of fate to develop your character. Ask yourself, what cards were they dealt? What are factors in their life that they couldn't escape if they wanted to? What are factors in their life that are like their reason for living, their main goals, their core values that are going to affect the things that they will work and struggle for? Think of it like a game board. What game board are they playing on? What are the factors involved in this game that is going to follow them through for their entire life? And when you discover your character's fate, this will greatly inform who that character is, but will also inform how the plot is going to work out in your story. A really great way to get good at working creatively is to go ahead and chart out the fate, your personal fate, and the fate of those you know. and go ahead and ask yourself, what are the things they can't escape from? What is going to follow them throughout their whole life, have an effect on the kind of lives they lead, whether they want it or not, and what are the things that they are willing to sacrifice everything for, and if you, as an exercise, go out and go ahead and chart the fates of two people you know really well, and then compare those two and appreciate how distinct they are from each other, how very different they are from each other. And this will help give you a sense of how it is part of the human condition to live side by side with people and still live in very different worlds. It's very much like we are each a world unto ourselves, because the kind of lives each of us live is so dramatically different from the lives of those we're living right next to on a daily basis. Okay, as an example, let's say that you're working on two characters that are siblings, and so, but one sibling, her fate is all about social, about who's popular, who said what, what happens with her friends and in society overall, who did an impressive thing, who did something that is going to harm their reputation, all of this. That is the game board that she's on. And her sister, on the other hand, has a fate where, let's say that she's really good at a sport, and this is every day, she wakes up at 4 in the morning to run 5 miles and keep track of how good she is at that sport, and that's sort of the world that she's in. So these two sisters are living side by side, and yet their worlds are so completely different from each other. So let's say that you're working on a story, and it has to do with people that go on an adventure. Let's go ahead and make it like a sword fighting story. So you have 5 people who are part of a team going on an adventure, and by brainstorming about, even though at first glance they all seem like they share the same fate, they're pretty much in the same boat, their lives or the possibility of their deaths are pretty much governed by the same factors, they face the same dangers, they face the same needs, but that's just the very beginning. The way you can enhance this story is to go ahead and realize that they can each have very different fates. Starting with, they could all have very different reasons for being there. One could be the prisoner and could possibly play the role of sabotaging the plans of the others. Then just personality can really determine how that same adventure that they're going on is very different for each individual. So if one is very temperamental, they could be battling their way through the entire time, where someone else is more sneaky and clever. They sort of step to the side and let the big struggles go on beside them, and sort of use their cleverness to have a much easier time throughout the entire trip. And remember, with anything creative, you're not trying to come up with the right answers. You're already working with something good, and you're just using this technique to enhance something that you already have a strong feeling is a good story. So I've been using this concept for a while, and I continually find new factors that determine a character's fate. So there is no exhaustive list of all the factors. It could be a number of things. It could be the fact that someone's pregnant. It could be the fact that someone owns a car or doesn't own a car. It could have a lot to do with personality. It could have a lot to do with where they live. the people that they are involved with throughout their lives. So it's more a matter of understanding that this concept is something where you can creatively come up with all the different things that make up a person's fate, and their fate doesn't have to be one thing, but think of it, have the image in your mind of a game board, and how it's a person's personal battle, good or bad. It could be, the battle to fly a spaceship to the moon. It is something that is very much just stuck on that one individual. Whenever we write fiction that deals with universals, that deals with the human condition, something that we can all identify with, no matter what characters are depicted, if it touches the human condition, then even if someone who is reading a book is a elderly person who lives in Canada, they could be reading a story about a youth in Cuba and identify with that character because it is reaching the human condition. And when we talk of the concept of fate, this is one way we can reach the universal, the human condition, and get people who are not like our characters to still identify with our characters. So the human condition here is that we're all more or less born handed the cards we're dealt. We're handed our fate. The human condition is that we tend to live out and to some extent feel stuck in the things that our lives are all about. And also one thing that is really different with different people is that some people just completely go along with how their lives are going to play out. And then you have other people who are like trying to escape their fate. They're trying to escape those factors that dominate their life, or somehow change them. For each of your characters, what is their fate, and then are they struggling with that in itself, or are they helping? Are they part of the reason that they have that fate? Are they clinging to their fate, or are they trying to change it? Maybe you have a character who's trying to create their own fate. They're trying to change the rules, the game rules of their lives once and for all. So this is one thing that works very good in storytelling, is diversification of fates between characters. So if you have characters, how distinct, how diverse can you make each character's fate? And think of it kind of like a game in itself. Challenge yourself and have fun with it. How much can you make it to where it's sort of like they're living in a bubble of their own worlds and still living in the world that all the characters in that story live in? As an exercise, the next time you're reading a book or watching a movie, ask yourself how diverse are the fates of each of the characters, and try to make a mental note about what exactly those fates are. If you can think of a story where all of the characters' fates are very distinct, diverse from each other, and creates an amazing impression in that story, write the title of it down in a comment. So go to the story you're working on right now, write down the names of each of the main characters, and put down words that describe each of their personal, lifelong struggles. One last thing. Fates change. They can a fate can feel like it will last a lifetime, but fates do change over time, and brainstorming on how your character's fate changes throughout the story is a great way to give this feeling of transition, to give this feeling that the whole game has changed for one of your characters, or especially the protagonist whose fate changes from the beginning of the story before the end of the story. That's very satisfying to a reader about their life, and if they're battling to overcome that fate and you make it seem that much more impossible that they'll overcome it, and then when they do, that creates a lot of dramatic tension that's going to make it more exciting and then satisfying when they finally do overcome that fate. I hope this has been helpful. Please take the time to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. I'm working on a story where one example of the story is that there are invisible agents who affect the livelihood of other people. And if that sort of story, if you're interested in that kind of fantasy, please go check out my story at solomation.com. I hope you have great writing sessions ahead, and have a good day. Okay, here I am speaking to you from beautiful Philadelphia. Today's topic is developing characters' fate.